Hello, welcome to Caesar's Snack Sandwich. Today I'm going to be taking a quick look at FRAX Ferry. Okay, now this is a bridge to go from like any of these chains to any of these chains for any of these FRAX tokens. Okay, now I used this a couple days ago and I was using it for FRAX ETH, and I was wondering, like, when I used it, it told me that it was going to take like about 24 hours for my transaction to go through. And I thought that to be bizarre for a bridge, that they would intentionally make it 24 hours to go through. But I thought about it and I'm like, oh, there must be some safeguards or something in there, and there must be some reason why it's 24 hours. So I went over to the docs and I read it, and as you can see, the docs is pretty light, right? And not very informative. Like, you could read this and you'll get a good understanding. I took this flow chart and I chopped it all up, so I will use the flow chart to explain how this thing works. And then I also spent some time inside the contracts reading the code, like not every single line, but like kind of making sure I understood the functions. And the only one that I can say I don't completely understand is this jettison. So this jettison function, I will be taking a guess at what it might do. I did ask already, but I'm too lazy to wait for them to answer me. I will find out, and this video will already be done. Now, there is this article here from DeFi, which is a bridge specialists, right? They aggregate all these bridges, and they do a pretty good job explaining it. And so I would suggest you to maybe come and read this as well, and you'll get a better understanding if my video doesn't do it for you. So let's swing over to the flowchart and try to understand how this thing works. If you would like to support the channel, I would suggest you to check out the secretsandwich.xyz. It's the Secret Sandwich NFT project. You can come here, you can mint an NFT, or you can come and check out your NFTs. Okay, so let's get back to it. Okay, so here we are on the flowchart, and here we have the bridging system. Okay, so for this flowchart, it's bridging between Ethereum and Arbitrum. So your tokens are on Ethereum, and you want to get them off of Arbitrum for this flow. Okay, so there are two blockchains. They're separated by a gap, right? So here comes the user, and the user comes to the FRAX Ferry UI. He interacts with it, and he says, "Oh, I want to send some FRAX token through the FRAX Ferry," right? So there are three functions here. I'll just quickly go: embark with recipient, and embark with signature. So embark is basically I want to go. Embark with recipient is I want my tokens to go and land somewhere else. So to change the destination wallet that the address will go. And then embark with signature is basically what is called after these two are called. So this one has a variable that changes the recipient, and this one just puts you as the recipient, right? And then it calls this embark with signature. It asks you for your signature, and your tokens are sent into this contract to sit here, okay? Now, the captain, after some times, he will call this thing called the depart. Like, so he will monitor this function, this thing, and he will call this depart. So he has 24 hours to call this depart function, and during that 24 hours, it's kind of like this. He calls the depart function, and then it kind of sets the batch of the transaction. So he calls it, and it's like, okay, now there's all of these tokens going to all of these different addresses. Go, like, so it takes 24 hours from the point when he presses depart until the time that it'll arrive in Arbitrum. Now, so it says 24, when you use the UI, it'll say 24 hours to 48 hours. So that gives the captain enough time for more people to join the ferry, right? So if you're the first person into the ferry, you're probably going to wait longer than the last person before the captain decides, that's enough. Let's send the boat on its way, so to speak. But there's not a major amount of gas or anything, so he doesn't have to consider that too much, right? Now, there's these crew members, okay? So the crew members are bots. They're designed by the FRAX team. They're bots who basically monitor the captain, this depart function. And they're watching this depart function, and they have the ability to do one thing at this time, and that is called a dispute the batch. So remember I told you there's a batch of tokens. There's me, you, a whole bunch of people sent tokens in here. The captain departed, and then these crew members are watching it for some sort of malicious, strange thing, right? So they're they're monitoring this, and if they see something strange based on their like bot perimeters, they will call this function called a dispute batch. Okay. Now, if they call this dispute batch, then the batch is canceled, and the captain has to deal with it. Now, I don't know exactly what happens here, but I believe the captain will just return everybody their tokens. I'm not exactly sure. Okay. The next part is if they don't dispute the batch, then it's then the tokens are the transaction's going to go through to the FRAX Ferry contract on Arbitrum. Okay. Now, these crew members also have the ability to pause this FRAX Ferry contract. So you got to think of it this way: these crew members, they're monitoring this transaction, and they're like, okay, that's good, and then they say, okay, no, there's nothing wrong with this to this contract. So they tell this contract to that batch is good, right? And then they can also pause this function, this contract, if there is something strange happening. Okay. Now, there's the owner of the FRAX Ferry contract. So it's the multi-sig, the FRAX multi-sig, right? And they have a bunch of functions that they can do. They can also pause if they find something scary, right? They can unpause it if the crew members, if these bots have paused it, then only the multi-sig can review why the bot paused it and unpause it. Now, like I said, these two jettison and jettison group is like to just put more than one, and jettison is to put one, right? So when you call jettison group, you're calling jettison with more than one, right? But what I think jettison does is it allows you to remove individual tokens from a batch. Okay, I think. I'm not exactly sure. And then remove batches. This team can be like, they can also remove batches that are sitting in here that are waiting for the 24 hours to go. They can just be like, yeah, that batch is not good. Okay. Now you have to think of it this way. Now this is like, say, the FRAX token. Okay, let's say this is the FRAX token on Arbitrum, and it is minted into this FRAX Ferry contract. And I believe the owner is I believe it's the owner. The owner is responsible to make sure that this token, enough of these tokens have been minted into this FRAX Ferry. Okay, so they can, they're going to fill it up. There's going to be more in here than needs to be, right? But they're not going to allow for unlimited minting. So this is one of the very special things about this, is that they have control over this FRAX Ferry contract's budget, right? So some of the other bridge hacks, they're allowed, they just mint like an insane amount of tokens, right? Because this destination contract had the ability to mint these tokens. So in this case, the multi-sig only has the ability to fill it up. So it's a protection. It's a level of protection, so that an enormous amount of tokens are never able to come out of this contract. If somehow the captain does send a bad batch and the crew members don't spot it, then at least this thing will be like, oh, I don't even have enough money. And then actual humans again here will be like, well, what's going on? And then they'll investigate it, right? Now, after everything's good, there's this first officer, and he can call this disembark. And basically what that does is it takes all the tokens and sends it to the addresses that were, speculated over here by this embark and so forth. Now, one of the questions I do have is how does this contract communicate with this contract? Because it's got to be done off chain, right? So there has to be some off chain. So I'm not sure if it would be the captain, if the captain actually informs this, and then the crew members just because it's got 24-hour lock, right? So the captain would inform this off chain, so he would see this, and then he would inform this that, oh, we're coming, 24 hours, it's coming, and then the bots monitor this. Or I'm not sure if if the captain just says, yeah, I'm good to go, and then the crew members see that, and then they tell this. But I'm pretty sure the captain tells both of them, and he says, he basically sees this batch and calls this on another chain. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. But anyhow, so that's basically how I understand this. You know, it could be wrong. Like I said, the docs isn't like 100% full, but I do think it's pretty interesting. I really like this bridge because of the safeguards that they've put in here. You give up a little bit of convenience because it's, you know, you're guaranteed to wait 24 hours, and maybe you might even wait up to 48 hours if you're like one of the first people in there. But being safe is obviously a benefit in DeFi nowadays, especially with all of the hacks and the bridges and stuff like that. There are some trust levels here, like you do trust this captain quite a bit, and that he doesn't propose a bad batch when the crew members are down, and maybe the crew, you're also trusting these crew members a little bit to know that when the what is a bad batch, right? So, but that's it. I like this and appreciate it. I hope this has been useful, and thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.